Hello, everyone. I'm changing this to 3 learnings, 2 conversations, and 1 challenge every week versus 1 conversation. The 3 learnings this week. Number 1 is this idea of talking to show authenticity. Right? Often we talk to build rapport, or we talk to say what we think others want to hear. But I actually think talking is a way of expressing what you believe in, how you think, what's interesting you. And by doing so, you draw in like-minded others and you start to intrigue others. So I love this idea of talking as a way to show authenticity. Learning number 2 is low margins as a forcing function. I think part of what made companies like Amazon so operationally rigorous is that they had such low margins on the core business. And when you have such low margins, it's a forcing function to cut fat, to build really strong cultures, to have great processes, to make sure that you're allocating capital very efficiently. Whereas if you compare Amazon to Google, Google has been buoyed by huge margins in the search business for such a long time. And I think what we can see is that has resulted in a bit of complacency, a culture which is not as relentless as, say, an Amazon. The third learning this week was this idea of pay attention to what you notice but nobody else sees. At any given point in time, you probably are noticing things or having beliefs about the world that other people might disagree with. So I love this idea of pay attention to what you notice but nobody else sees. And I think relatedly is this concept of rules as deeply constraining and pattern recognition as a negative attribute. This week, there were 2 conversations that stood out. One was with a young founder friend in building a healthcare AI company, 22-year-old Wiz from Australia. He said, one of the most important questions that we always ask ourselves from a strategic perspective is, how would we build this if we had AGI? What would change if we had AGI? And I think that is such an important question, because I think it's so important to be building for a future version of the world versus just building for today, particularly given the rate of change and the magnitude of these changes and the impact they're going to have. So how would you build this? How would you define your strategy if we had AGI already? The second conversation this week was with Dina, one of the general partners at Lux, a large venture capital fund. And it reinforced this thing I'm noticing, that distinguishes good investors from bad investors, where bad investors ask questions to tick or cross boxes, whereas good investors are constantly forming and reforming and validating and invalidating hypotheses. So at any given point in time, you can almost see a good investor having a hypothesis around what the concerns are in particular, and double clicking, not being afraid to interrupt you, not being afraid to be really curious and dive into things which seem interesting. And I think the good investors use what I think of as a hypothetico-deductive approach of reasoning, where you have a hypothesis and you seek to validate or invalidate it. The challenge I've been grappling with this week is this feeling of doing less IC work, individual contributor work, and slightly more manager work. And the reason I found this a little bit challenging is I think up until this point in my life, I've always prided myself on the quantity of individual contributor work I can get done, the quality of it, my ability to show others that I can do really good work that way. But I think as you grow with the company, you have to actually learn to get out of the individual contributor role and more into the leader role. Now, even though I feel like I might be doing a little bit less IC work, interestingly, the team feels more empowered. The team is moving really quickly. Our culture is feeling really strong. And I think that's a sign of the power of sometimes actually realizing that you don't have to do the task yourself, and there are better people for you at the task than you. So I've been grappling and getting better at moving into away from the IC work and into this version of the world where other people are highly, highly empowered, and I'm really editing their work or directing them or helping them reason through problems. So to sum up this week, the 3 learnings were talking to show authenticity, low margin as a forcing function, and paying attention to what you notice but nobody else sees. The 2 conversations were how would you build this if you had AGI, and then how Great investors focus on this hypothetico-deductive approach. And then my challenge was grappling with doing a little bit less IC work and moving more into the role of the output, not of me as an individual, but the output of my team as a team.